Since Final Fantasy VII being a multi-game release was first announced, it was originally speculated that the game would have 3 parts. To clarify, this has never been confirmed anywhere at all, but it's been mainstream ideal. Perhaps because there are 3 discs in the original game, or perhaps because Nomura and Kitase have described the releasing structure similar to Final Fantasy XIII's trilogy, but hopefully way less shittier. This multi-game structure has made a lot of people making 6 cents an hour concerned about the price of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII is being designed and overseen by Square Enix, but they're actually not the ones developing it. The folks over at CyberConnect 2 are the ones behind the actual development of the game. This actually happens a lot in game development if you aren't aware, where companies don't always internally develop the game. They act as designers and overseers of the project while outsourcing the programming and development of the models, textures, and other assets to another company. Many of you are familiar with CyberConnect 2, and if you aren't, they're the people behind the Dot Hack games and the Naruto games, if you give a damn about those. After working on Final Fantasy VII G-Bike, a mobile spin-off game based on the motorcycle minigame from Final Fantasy VII that Square Enix promised would get localized and of course never actually did, Square Enix developed a firm relationship with CyberConnect 2. There were many hints that CyberConnect 2 would be the ones potentially to develop a Final Fantasy VII Remake long before the announcement, and it ended up happening. Now going back to Dot Hack and Dot Hack GU, these were multi-game releases, and it was awesome at the time too because you got this anime running parallel to the game's story, and you get more of the anime with each episode. It was pretty damn amazing. But it's for that reason I believe Square Enix contacted CyberConnect 2. They have experience with multi-game releases like Dot Hack, perhaps more so than any other company. I know some people try to point out Telltale, so the Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be a Telltale game now. No, it's not. These games are not episodic, they're multi-game releases, similar to Dot Hack, so let's clear up that confusion. If we look at the cost of Dot Hack, the first game was $50, so that's essentially the cost of a full game. I think it's safe to say that Square Enix is more than likely going to charge 60 United States dollars, or whatever the standard pricing for a full video game is at your local pricing, for the first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So each game would cost progressively less. It's hard to find out what the exact prices were given that I was young as hell at the time and it would be incredibly hard to remember. It's also not something that can be readily Google searched either, believe me, I've tried. But they costed around $10 less each entry, with the final entry, Quarantine, if I remember correctly, costing around $30. And remember this was the era of the PlayStation 2, so brand new games costed around $50 brand new. I for one have always wanted a Final Fantasy VII Remake, so even if it takes $200 to complete, I'm still interested. I don't necessarily object to the price as much as I do wonder what the value of each game will be. In order for customers to not feel ripped off, I feel as though at least 20 hours worth of story will be needed to fill each entry to feel like a complete game, and that doesn't even cover side content. The original Final Fantasy VII was one of the most expensive games ever made, and honestly, it still is to this day when you factor in inflation. The development cost of this game is going to be tremendous, and it's safe to say Square Enix wouldn't be able to make a profit on this game if it was a single game at $60, as they'd have to sell even more copies than they did of the original Final Fantasy VII, which is pretty unlikely. The good thing is that for people who've waited all this time, they'll be able to play a fully fleshed out Final Fantasy VII with such things as an open world Midgar. And for people who don't like the multi-game release structure, you can always wait until all the games in the series come out and then play them at once, which would be how long you'd be waiting for the Final Fantasy VII Remake anyways if it was just one game. And it would probably be a lot less expensive to buy them as a bundle that they'll inevitably sell at the end. That'll be cheaper and will include all 3 or 4 parts. So what do you guys think? Will you be willing to pay this much for a Final Fantasy VII Remake? Let me know in the comments below.